peace to us all. Let's briefly talk about marriage and relationships, because I grew up largely in the church where I saw stereotype against women of some ages, especially like from mid-20s thereabout, that if you were not married, then you kind of look like an outcast in the church. So most people were trying their best to get married around that time. And so I realized that for most ladies who were not fortunate enough, if I should say, to get married around that age, out of frustration, some would just get pregnant, and that also became another canker in the church. I grew up in a Pentecostal church, and I noticed how women who were not married and got pregnant were excommunicated from the church. For some instances, they were called, their names were mentioned, they came to the front of the church, and it was announced that, well, these people do not go pay the doctrine and the holy scriptures, so they've been excommunicated. They are not going to participate in some church activities. Meanwhile, these people come to church, they pay their tithes and offering, all right. That one there, the church will collect it. But because they are pregnant out of wedlock, the church thinks they can't engage in certain activities. What a shame. It's like it was some kind of mandate for young people at a certain age to get married. I feel this is where society went wrong when it comes to relationships. We should understand that people have different life destinies. There are people who marry very young, and then maybe by their midlife, like 40s, they are getting divorced. There are people who even marry very late in life, maybe 40, and the marriage doesn't even last 1 year. It just goes apart. So the church also had this notion that if you had to get married, you have to, especially for the women, you have to be a virgin. No man should have seen you. And for the men, well, maybe it was free for them to move about, So people were trying so hard to keep up to societal conditions and standards. But right now I've come to understand that people have different life paths. For example, even in the church, look at the case of Mary. This was a young lady who had been betrothed to be married to a man, and yet still God decided to choose her to be the incubator for his son. It's the same way with life, especially for women. People have different destinies, and right now with me learning about incarnation, reincarnation, and the fact that life is continuous, it never ends, I've come to understand that people come into this life for different reasons. With my family, for instance, for both my mom and father's side, I saw a lot of divorces growing up, and it was one of the things that scared me most about marriage, because like what at all makes people go apart. And I remember my childhood, most of the time it was sad for me, because I had a couple of friends who had their parents always around them, and I didn't have that. So for me, I felt like one of my life mission was to change that narrative in the family where couples don't marry and children have to move from one home to the other, because basically when I was growing up, that's how my childhood was. So at this point, I try all my best to stay in a marriage because I don't want my children to go through the kind of experiences I went through. Maybe that may be my life path. But for some people, they didn't come here to experience that. If life is continuous, maybe they had very painful marriages, and this life, they said to themselves, I'm going to be single and free and wild and just enjoy my life. For some people, maybe they stayed in certain marriages and they were not able to experience life to some extent. So they made this life contract that in my next life, even if I choose to be married, it should come with certain conditions. For some people, maybe they married a poor man in their past life, and they really felt miserable. So in this life, they are like, unless it's a rich man, I'm not going to get married. So people go into marriages for different reasons and different contracts. Until you understand who you are and the reason why you have come into this world, you wouldn't know what to do, and people sometimes wouldn't understand what you do. Because I remember, like, when I started this awakening, I hear most of my colleagues say, well, it's an abomination for an African to marry a white person, But yes, still, I've seen interracial couples that look more happy than people who marry from their own tribes or ethnicity. There's a saying that a fabia mensamo, so the fact that you are marrying somebody from your tribe, it doesn't mean you'll be more happier than somebody who decided to marry, an old rich man, or somebody who, it all depends on your life karma, your life lessons, and what you came to this life to do. For some people, they are not supposed to get married. And I feel the church put a lot of taps on these young ladies instead of allowing people to express themselves freely as they want to do. For some people in this life, they didn't choose to be married. They just chose that I'll have children and I'll be happy. Until you can go into the person's life, probably spiritually, to understand why the person has to go through that experience, you would never know the kind of solutions. I think it's high time we learn to, appreciate people for who they are and how far they've come in this life. It's like if you're a young lady and between the ages of 25, 30 and not married, it feels like, oh, she's wasting her life. One bobra, all sort of bad things are said against you. And recently I've seen posts where people are like, I'll never marry a single woman. Who told you that any woman would desire to be a single woman? People get married and at a point in time may lose their spouse without any fault of theirs. Doesn't mean their life has ended. Listen, it amazes you that there are some single mothers who are doing way better, way better than women who have decided to be in abusive, unloving relationships. It's all about knowing you and deciding what works best for you. For some people, their life feels better and more complete when they are in a loving union. Sometimes it's not even loving, but just the name tag say Mawari, I'm married alone makes them happy, makes them thrive better. For others, they have to be single to experience this life, to be able to explore, move about. And I've seen this new trend where even though it's polygamy, the man has his partners, the woman also has her partners, and they're all doing well within the marriage. This one, they'll say it's not an African culture, but I always say African culture is so big, too big to be put into one category. What may work for one tribe or culture or place may not work for other people. At the end of the day, let's allow people to be. A teacher once told me the only thing that binds Africans as one people is our belief system, our cultural values, and the fact that we all believe in our ancestral roots. But the point is, whoever we are understanding our lineage and deciding to honor our ancestors in that regard. So let's allow people to feel free to vibe the way they want to. For as long as they are not hurting anybody, they are not causing any problems in other people's life, I feel it's normal. Let's be open-minded. I support polygamy. I support singlehood. I support everybody. For as long as you have been able to come to terms with yourself and have chosen to identify yourself by some kind of relationship, that's cool. So let's love lead and let's all learn to be in a loving society. Peace and blessings.